Welcome to the Ecommerce Alley podcast, where we believe that in order to build life-changing businesses, you need to have passionate leadership, smart operations, and of course, powerful marketing. My name is Josh Coffey, and I've spent the last 11 years helping businesses generate hundreds of millions in sales with our marketing frameworks and our coaching. But in this episode, I want to talk about 10 principles they've changed my life, and they've helped our business double revenue in the last 12 months. One of my favorite movies is called The Greatest Showman. If you've never watched it, it's an amazing movie. It's about P.T. Barnum. It's played by Hugh Jackman, but it's about this guy named P.T. Barnum who comes from nothing. His parents die while he's at a young age. He doesn't have a penny to his name, but he has like this unharnessed potential and passion just for life that comes to be realized by the end of his life. And it's actually based on the real P.T. Barnum. Now, obviously, it's like dramatized and there are aspects that are fictional of it, but whenever there's like hey, based on the real entrepreneur guy, I'm just such a sucker for those entrepreneurial journey movies. And so I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And I was watching it a month ago for probably like the fifth time. And I'm watching it a month ago with my wife, Kelsey, and I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. While P.T. Barnum is sharpening his pencil at a job that he hates, he looks out of the window and he looks, the camera like goes over his shoulder and it focuses out the window on this cemetery. And he just takes his shoulders and goes, and he just sighs as if like he would be better off dead than where he was. Like a failure, wanting more, but feeling stuck. Right? And so he looks out the window, and I never noticed this before, and I love that because it shows him looking over and saying, hey, I would be better off dead like those guys in the cemetery than being a failure in where I was. And as if like it couldn't get worse, like 30 seconds later in that scene, he gets laid off from his job. And so in desperation, he like takes this loan from a bank to open up a museum of wax figures. And so he gets super excited and him and his family, they're passing out all these flyers to promote it. But at the end of the day, nobody ends up coming until he has this eye-opening conversation with his daughter who tells him that, hey, Daddy, more people would come if the things in the museum were alive, not wax. And that's when he just completely shifts his business model from wax figures to live people with like tons of weird, talented appearance looking people, and he then creates what we all know as the modern day circus. But as like his success grows, he starts figuring stuff out. And then as his success grows, he starts to lose sight of his family and the things that really matter. He chases fame, he chases fortune, and ultimately it bankrupts him in this like aggressive pursuit to like grow. And then at the end of the movie, it comes back and he realizes, hey, the true joy comes from the people that he loves and the passion that kind of started everything for him. And I mean, he loses everything, the building gets burned down, and it's just this incredible movie about reconnecting with the values that you begin with. It's really heartwarming. But in a movie like that, I love movies because I love the storytelling that comes with them. And when they're entrepreneurial like that, I love it because there's so many lessons for us as entrepreneurs. That as we grow, sometimes we feel like we're on top of the mountain. In other moments, it doesn't feel like that. And in a movie, there's this thing called the hero's journey. And in the hero's journey, the hero goes through these different failures until there's a moment where on the mojo scale, the hero begins to take this enormous dip until they're in this bottom period of time where it's what they call the resurrection. And then when you're in the bottom of this period of time, you experience a resurrection, which then skyrockets you back up into what they call the final triumph. And in movies, this makes a lot of sense, right? That's how every movie goes. Every Hallmark movie especially goes like this. And so the girl comes into the town, meets the guy, they start this thing, it starts to look good, and then suddenly she gets called back to the big city, and suddenly she misinterprets something that he's doing, and they separate, and then there's this bottom of the bottom, and she realizes on the plane over that I need to turn around, and so she convinces the pilot to turn it all around. It's the resurrection moment. He realizes that he loved her and that she truly loved him. They come back and they happen to meet at the exact same spot, and it's happily ever after in that final triumph. But those are movies, right? For us as entrepreneurs, we're never finished. Like there isn't this final triumph until we're dead. You see, like I believe that there's a piece missing in the hero's journey in real life application, and that's reinvention. Like there's this moment where you are at the bottom of the bottom. You feel like you've gone in, you're excited, everything's going well, and then it starts to go down and tank, and you're trying to fight, you're scratching, you're clawing to try to make progress. You feel that you're in a hole, and then there's this moment of resurrection and triumph. But then what happens is you encounter a new villain. It might be a skill set, it might be a personal circumstance or a challenge that just sets you back. And it's just kind of like that, like I grew up playing a lot of video games, and it's like that boss you can't beat, that you're so annoyed and you keep going back and back and back and trying to beat that boss. And so you come back and there's a triumph until you encounter, because life is long and life is, until the day that you die, is continual, right? And so as you come back up from that resurrection moment, maybe in your business or a moment in your life, there's a triumph until you meet the next villain, until things start to go down a little bit. Until you reinvent yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, and you experience a new level of triumph. And then it takes you to a higher level, right? So it's this kind of wave effect that happens as you grow and as you become better and as you become wiser over and over again. And becoming wiser and stronger with every reinvention and with every triumph. And for me, my resurrection moment was in 2018. I started my business in 2013, so this was 5 years in. And in 2018, I am in the mountains of North Carolina with my family. We're on vacation. I kind of mooched off of them, to go to this multi-million-dollar Airbnb. And I have $1.06 in my bank account. I have a dozen staff that I have to pay. I'm broke. I'm burned out. I'm hating every day. I'm 5 years in, and I'm working every hour that I can on this vacation, like huddled in the corner, I'm passionless. What I started out loving, I no longer loved. I just felt like everything that I did consistently failed. Until I dramatically changed what we were doing. I learned something new. The hero in the story learns a new lesson, gets a new idea, and has their Yoda come along and give them this wisdom or this insight or this idea pops in their mind that suddenly changes everything for them. And so for us, we were hyper-focused on our marketing. And so, we got hyper-focused on our marketing. We were like doing a lot of stuff, and we decided to hyper-focus and be more consolidated. We decided to introduce new product offerings. I recast the vision that's now 10 times larger than it was when I originally did it 5 years before that. And it continues to expand every year. And I believe personally that much of the growth we've experienced in the last 6 years since that moment is because of that. Like my heart is in everything that we do. Like I experienced this moment of resurrection, and we came out of that moment in triumph and growth and all of this stuff, but we hit the next villain. And then we reinvented ourselves, and we learned a lot more, and we became wiser, and then we hit the next villain, and then it came down. And then we reinvented ourselves, and we became wiser, and then we hit the next villain. And so in your journey, you might feel like you're in the dumps. You might feel like, hey, I'm going down, and I need to find my resurrection moment. Some of you might be having just experienced that, and you're in this phase of triumph, or maybe you're in this phase where you're like, hey, I hit the bottom of the bottom, and I'm trending up, but now I've hit another boss. I've hit another level that I just can't push through. And so what I want to do is I want to share 10 principles of reinvention, because reinvention is a requirement to continually break through barriers, to go through new ceilings and new levels in your life and in your business. And so hopefully you can take something from this. These are lessons we've kind of learned along the way, principles that we now follow that have made such a substantial difference in our trajectory and in our growth. Because what I want to see you build a business that you love and that you thrive in. And yes, it's challenging, because there's no such thing as a business that doesn't have challenge or stress, but rather say, hey, how can I spend more time designing a life that I love over trying to fill everything with the next, or fill space with the next thing. And so over these last 11 years, I've learned a lot of stuff, and I want to share. These are 10 principles of reinvention. invention that might just help you break through the barrier in the place that you're at right now. And the first thing is that the thing that you start out doing will eventually not be fun. You must love building the castle. So what that means is like when you start, like when I started in 2013, you might be the one making the product. You might be the one designing everything. And you might love it. That's fun, right? You love the maker, you make the doing. But after you've made or fulfilled your 10,000th order, it's a lot less fun. And so it simply becomes a thing that you do. And in order to achieve the big dreams you have, you're likely not going to be doing the stuff that you started out doing, or you won't grow. You're going to hit a ceiling, and it's going to be based on your own personal capacity. You're going to have somebody else doing it. So eventually the thing that you do and that you love is going to change. Like Walt Disney, he animated until the grand vision required more from him. So you have to like fall in love with this idea of consistently building your business. I like to say it's bricks in the castle. Every time we encounter a boss or we encounter a hole in our system, I view it as like a hole in the castle. Like at a distance, you didn't realize it was a hole. But as you get closer to it, you realize, oh my goodness, right at the base of the castle, there's this hole this big, and I need to put a brick in there, or else if I keep building up, the foundation is going to be weak. And so I like to say bricks in the castle. Every hole, every challenge, every boss you feel you can't beat is an opportunity to then say, hey, how do I put another brick in the castle? Like each process, each hire, success you have is a brick in the castle. And every challenge we encounter and solve, we continue to say that same exact thing. And that's why I love challenges when they present themselves, because now it's like, hey, I have an opportunity to become better and solidify the strength of our company and me as a leader. That is the first principle. The second principle on that is that volume exposes weakness. So get it in. If you've never golfed, golf is a great example of, hey, volume exposes weakness, so you just got to get the volume in, and that's it. If you haven't golfed, though, the best way I could describe this is it's like herding cats, but the cats are all like golf balls. They absolutely hate you, and they're never going to go in the direction that you want them to go. That's what it's like. And the reason I know that is because a few months ago, I golfed for the first time in my life. And I have never been so frustrated and challenged before. Like the amount of anger you experience from like 9 out of 10 swings is just like straight infuriating. And especially when you're golfing with a group of guys who all show up and pull out their own golf bags and golf clubs and golf clothes like they're about to walk into the Phoenix Open. But I'm there and I'm just like, I'm not wearing the right stuff. I got to run a bag. I don't know the 9-iron from the numbered ones here, from the driver and the size of drivers. I don't know what the heck is what. When do you get to use the little tee and when do you not? I didn't know any of that stuff. And so I just had like, that's what happens when you don't have volume in. It exposes weakness really fast. And so you should make it your objective to expose that weakness, to get your volume in, so that way you become better. Because when you're golfing, the more you work on your stance, the more swings you do, the more you've practiced the grip, the better your judgment, and the more swings you're going to get right. You're going to go from 1 out of 10 that you actually hit in any relatively good direction toward where it needs to go, to 2 out of 10, to 3 out of 10, to 4 out of 10. And volume of activity simply exposes how bad you are at something. We like to say in all of our programs, we say, hey, the first is the worst. Like the first headline and creative and primary text and ad campaign you launch is going to be the worst one. You have no idea what works, what doesn't work. You don't know the difference between intent-based ads and intrigue-based ads. And those are all holes that you'll become aware of as you get your volume in. It exposes the holes in the castle foundation that you have. And then all you have to do is say, hey, I need to go fill that hole. I need to put another brick in the castle. And a good question to ask yourself to say like, hey, where do I need to get more volume in? Or where might I have holes in the castle is to ask yourself this question like, hey, if I had 10 times more orders tomorrow, what would break? Because what would break are your future holes. And those holes have been there all along, but they're just not as prominent until they're magnified from volume. Like can your, like from a production constraint standpoint, can your team handle increased demand, or would you be backlogged for weeks if you 10x orders? Will you, from an inventory forecasting standpoint, will you run out of stock or over order and end up with costly excess in inventory? From a customer support standpoint, can your current support team manage 10 times more inquiries and support tickets without sacrificing response time or quality? From a tech infrastructure standpoint, is your website ready for a surge in 10 times the amount of traffic, or is it going to crash and burn during that period of time? We've seen this stuff happen all the time. And here's the good thing is if you look at it as an opportunity to put a brick in the castle, you'll continue to grow. And so, fun fact about me, and annoying for everybody else around me, is I love to celebrate holes in the castle because I'm like, hey, I get to figure out where the holes are and how we can become greater and build that stronger foundation. We actually hosted our largest, it was a 3-day boot camp. We sold tickets. It's like $17 for a ticket. We did a Facebook ads boot camp. And we did this a little while ago. And we had 850 registrants. And there was so much support and random requests that it would just blow your mind. Like the things that people would say in the support tickets, because that was 2.5 times the volume we normally did. We had never had that many people. We normally would have 300 to 350, and here we had 850. And my response was, I love that these are our problems. Like I celebrate that because the fact that those are our problems means that we're growing and everything is figure outable. Because volume exposes weakness, so get it in and then celebrate it as you overcome it. The third principle is that scaling is a byproduct of non-scalable activities. And I did a podcast on that. You can go check it out. We'll include a link in the description. Go check that out. And scaling is a byproduct of non-scalable activities. And what that means is, like, for me, I used to think of everything in terms of scale. Like what would or wouldn't scale was usually just based on whether I personally wanted to do it. And if it couldn't be automated or it was crappy work and I had to do it, I would immediately say, hey, it doesn't scale, or I'd shut it down, or I would say, I have to outsource this because this doesn't scale for me. But what was interesting was when we began focusing on like quality work and building strong foundations and going above and beyond for our customers, I learned something really important, and that is that heart-to-heart scales. Taking the time to do something that is non-scalable scales. Like instead of asking, is this a scalable activity? We began asking, what is best for my customers? In our business, we talk to a lot of business owners, and there's often like this think about it stage when people are joining one of our higher mentorship programs. And not always, but oftentimes there's like, hey, I need to think about it stage. And normally I would never text or call our prospective clients because that sure as heck, like that doesn't scale. Like that takes a lot of time. But in the last year, you know what we started doing? We started saying, hey, rather than saying, does this scale? Because Josh's time in the company is very valuable. What if we said, we want to try to become a heart-to-heart company where we're speaking to people's hearts and we're serving them how they need to be served in the way that they are in the journey moment that they're in right now. And don't worry about what's scaling. Let's just do the right thing that we believe is going to serve them the best. And so I decided to start texting people who were considering joining our stuff. I would call new customers after they bought things. I would randomly look at people that even bought $17 tickets, and I would just pick up the phone and I would call them and I would thank them. And the response was incredible. We would text, we would call people, we had this personal level, and while you would say that's not a scalable activity, you know what does scale? When way more people begin saying yes and buying from you for only a few minutes a day of your time. And when way more people are referring because they've had such a great experience, and way more people are staying longer and buying more often because they've had such a great experience. And so for us, like now that is built into our process. We don't automate it because there's often a back and forth that goes with it. And people can sniff automation a mile away, by the way. And the other thing is like with this, it goes against scaling logic, but we're serving our clients better. And as a result, we're much more profitable. And I've also learned this is that every activity is scalable. Like even if it means hiring someone to do the work, like calling and texting every single customer that ever buys from you, not scalable from like a you standpoint as you grow and do a certain volume, but do you think that it would serve your customers and provide them a better experience? Probably. But what if you never touched the phone? What if you hired somebody, shocker, right, that did that? That's scalable. You can scale in one-to-one environments, and most people think that you can't. And so if your activities are focused on what's best for your customers, you will scale as a byproduct of those activities. Principle number 4, you can have control or freedom, but you can't have both. Many people want freedom, but they're not willing to give up control. Like they say in everything, like they want to say in everything. They don't trust team members to do stuff, to fail, to improve. And so they spend all their time micromanaging and stuck in like the minutia of business. And they complain about their team and how nobody can do what they do. And as a result, they don't experience freedom at all. They're just trapped in working more than they were before they started the business. I worked with a business one time that was, they were doing about $1 million per year. And it was these two brothers, they were business partners, and they had been running the business for over 25 years. But they were stuck. They're doing 7 figures. Most people want to become a 7-figure business, and they were doing 7 figures. But they were 25 years in. They were stuck. They're working 7 days a week. They're still in the kitchen. At their brick and mortar location, they're burned out. They're not taking vacation. They're not taking holidays. But you know what they said? They said, hey, if we can get our revenue to 2 to 3 million, then we'll have more time. We can use that to hire people, buy back our time, and be able to enjoy life more. And for them, they were in their 50s and 60s. And so what they did is they hired us to get a lot more customers for them, to get them to from that 1 million-ish range to like that 2 to 3 million range. And we did. In fact, we took them from 1 million to 3 million in 9 months. And I mean, do you think you could experience freedom if you got to 3 million? Most people theoretically would if you do the right things. They didn't. It actually got worse. They trusted nobody. They didn't delegate. They didn't train. They didn't coach or let go of almost anything. And they continued to just churn and burn through all of their employees. And I remember on Christmas Eve, I got a call from one of the owners venting about how he had been working 16 hours a day that entire week just to get orders out on time, and said he can't find any good help anywhere that will, quote, like do it right. And he said that when they live in New York City with 8.5 million people, the most populated city in America. He wanted freedom, but he was unwilling to give up control. So you have to decide, what do you want? And then take steps toward that. And you have to be okay if you want to give up control. You have to be okay with things being 80% of how you would do them. That's another one. And that's kind of tough because you care so much. And this has been one of my personal greatest challenges, is just letting go. But it is a requirement to experience complete freedom inside your business. Principle number 5, balance doesn't exist, flow does. I don't know if you've ever heard this statement or something around this, but I've often heard for my whole life, you need a healthy work-life balance where you feel like evenly spread on prioritization of your work, your family, finance, faith, fun, health, etc. I don't know very many people that could raise their hand and say, yes, I have the perfect healthy balance in my life. And how I look at balance, when I think of balance, I think of like literal balance and metaphorically. So when I think of balance, I think of like somebody walking on a tightrope and you have this long pole, right? And then you're constantly trying to correct yourself. And maybe for a brief moment, you're right in the center, but you're never truly balanced. You're never in a truly balanced state. And so if that's the reality of what most people's lives are, and I've never heard a person in my entire life tell me I feel perfectly, entirely balanced all the time, then it begs a question, why do we pursue it? It's like this alluring pursuit of something that is unobtainable, that doesn't exist. So if we agree that true balance, and most people agree that true balance doesn't exist, then the question to ask is, why do we pursue it? Like having an expectation for something that isn't real is only going to let you down. Like I could want to go to Hogwarts and go learn from Dumbledore. Well, rip, Dumbledore's not around anymore. Sorry if I ruined that for you. I could go to Hogwarts as much as I want, but guess what? There's some castles that they filmed some stuff, but it's not an actual real place. So I'm only going to get let down if I believe that that is true. And so if we believe that balance doesn't truly exist, then we pursue it for what reason other than to be let down? And so instead of trying to find the perfect work-life balance, maybe you become okay with creating flow based on the current priorities and season of your life. And so I like to think of it like a pie, not like this tightrope that we're balancing. I like to look at it as a pie where all my priorities sit inside the pie. And a lot of times we expect, hey, if I have like, for me, let's say it's like business, family, faith, health, friends, money, fun, right? Let's say those were all the categories. replace them with whatever your priorities are in your life right now. You might think that the expectation is they're all going to be the same, but they're never going to be that. So instead, the pie just shifts around. And there are moments in your life where suddenly family is majority of the time. And you have to just be okay with that. Like for me right now in my life, when we get to Q4, our team usually slows down and we spend a lot more time with family. I spend a lot more time doing things in our community and with our church and all of that. And I make plans and say, hey, my pie is about to shift and work is going to shrink and family is going to expand. And when I get into January of this coming year, I have my first baby that's due and family is going to expand even more, especially during that month of January. So here's the thing. If balance doesn't exist, let's look at it like a pie, and the priorities inside it simply shift. So when you stop trying to balance your priorities and you just learn to flow with them, you're going to avoid disappointment and you're going to avoid unmet expectations of something that is not reality. Principle number 6 is if it doesn't scare the crap out of you, then your vision is too small. Growth comes from discomfort. Your vision needs to be so big that the thought of accomplishing it sounds scary. And I don't know if you're familiar with Elon Musk's vision for SpaceX, but I love it. And it is to make humanity a multi-planetary species by colonizing Mars. Sounds like straight sci-fi, right? His belief is that by establishing a human settlement on another planet, we could safeguard the future of civilization in case of catastrophes on Earth, whether that's natural or like human-made. And he envisions a Mars city starting with like a small settlement that they call Mars Base Alpha. And what he does is he plans for it to like grow into like multifunctional city with homes and businesses and industries on Mars. And so if we think about this for a moment, Mars is 140 million miles away from Earth. The planet has harsh environment conditions. It has temperatures that plunge all the way to like negative 80 degrees, and it has this atmosphere that is mostly carbon dioxide, by the way, not good for human beings, and it has high radiation levels. And no human has ever even stepped foot on Mars. So the idea of creating a livable environment would be a monumental, difficult challenge that would require technology that doesn't likely exist today. And the idea of like transporting humans and equipment and materials millions of miles across space, and it has got to be a logistical nightmare. And you need to like create reusable rockets, which is where SpaceX really shines, by the way, and what they're working on. And you have to ensure sustainable food and water and oxygen and all of these things. That's like a scary big vision. Like that's like on the extreme end of the spectrum. And the first thing that probably pops in your mind when you hear something like that is no way that's possible. That couldn't work. Like humans can't live on Mars or travel that far. That's only in sci-fi movies. But if you're not even a little scared, you're not taking risks. And without risks, there's a limited reward. Because if it's too small, it's easy to just push aside. It's easy to ignore. And for our company, every single Monday, it's really fun. So like we do a team meeting every Monday for the week, and we all start the meeting by saying our vision, and it's really fun. Like I'll say our vision is, and then everybody like in the most mundane voices ever says to educate, entertain, and empower every e-commerce business owner on the planet with unparalleled excellence, and then we all clap. And it's super corny, it's super cheesy. There's never been a week that we don't all giggle like a bunch of little kids. But that's our mission and our vision and what we're looking to do. And our team repeats it in unison. It's funny, but it's big. It's scary. It's kind of crazy. Like every e-commerce business owner on the planet, not just like the United States. Like how in the world are we going to do that? When there are behemoth companies out there doing education like Shopify, right? When there are time zone and language barriers, when markets behave differently, when we're located, our headquarters is in the middle of nowhere in Ohio in a bunch of cornfields. Like how do you serve people at a capacity where we're at right now if we worked with 100,000 or 1 million entrepreneurs? And here's the answer. It doesn't matter because the how will be figured out along the way. The most important is the what. What are we looking to do and why are we looking to do it? Because the how will be figured out as the journey progresses. So for you, what is the big vision that you have that scares the crap out of you? And if you don't know, you might need to take some time to answer that and make that your true North Star that you follow. Principle number 7 is if you're in a valley, talk to 10-year future you. One of my best friends is 10-year older Josh, and he's like super wise, super successful, and he's incredibly shredded. And he's also made of steel with like enough war stories to fill an entire book. And for me, when I'm at some of my lowest moments in life, he's there telling me that, hey, dude, in 10 years, you're going to tell stories about that moment. In 10 years, you're not even going to be thinking about that. That's going to be such a thing in the past. It's going to be such a small occurrence and situation that your brain isn't even going to go there or even remember it because it's that small. So like, what if in every season of pain, future you told you, hey, you're going to laugh about this soon, or there's a lesson in this season right now, or hey, you've got this, it doesn't turn out like you think, or I promise you're not going to end up dead and on the side of the street. The amount of times I've told myself this story has saved me so much heartache. And it's hard to do that when you're in the middle of it. And what I used to do is I would write down the moments in a journal that happened. And I have years of journals that I can go back through and those moments of how painfully broke I was and how I didn't know how to lead our team. And then we hit all of these ceilings. And then I would always say, hey, I know that in 5 years, in 3 years, in a year, in 10 years, this isn't even going to be a thing. Because if you always look through that lens, then everything that you're doing in the moment feels small. It feels like, hey, I'm going to make it through. I'm going to survive this. And so if you're in a rut, if you feel tough, just talk to 10-year-older you. They're a lot wiser, a lot better looking, a lot more shredded, and they have a ton of war stories that they could tell you that, guess what? You're still alive and you're still going to make it through. Principle number 8 is assume failure, test fast, and exploit success. Most stuff will fail. Statistically, ads, products, tests that you do are going to fail. So if you assume failure, then you're not going to be disappointed, but rather you're going to learn from it. And so we assume failure, but we don't worry about perfection. We launch new ideas, we test quickly, which is, if you've ever gone through one of our like ad lab boot camps or training course, it's $17. By the way, go grab it. It's in the description. If you've ever gone through ad labbing, the concept is like, hey, how do we test a lot of things in a short window of time for a very small amount of budget to identify outliers? And we believe this in ads, but we also do this with other things. We test this in products. We test this with different ideal customer profiles. We test this with different ads. Ads are a part of that. We test a lot of things very, very quickly. So we assume that most things we're going to do. If I were to throw 20 darts, if I had 20 products and I threw 20 darts, most of those are going to land in really bad spots. But there might be one that lands in the bullseye. And the question is, am I willing to explore to find that? And then when I do, I move. If it's an outlier, I'll know right away. And then what I do is I just crank the heat until the next constraint presents itself. And then I exploit the success of that. So we believe in assuming failure. Most things are going to fail. I have that expectation. So I'm going to try 10 things or 15 things or 20 things. And then I'm going to test them really quickly for a low amount of resource investment of time and money. And then once I find the thing that is the outlier that's winning, I will then exploit the success of that. I will optimize it and I will go deep in that area. You see, most people go deep and then they're at a dead end. There's this concept of go all in, and we go all in, and then going all in is the dead end. And then we get stuck and then we crumble because of that. So we like to test fast and go wide and then exploit success and go deep. Principle number 9 is that evolution of you and your business is okay. Like imagine if Amazon was still only an online bookstore like it was in the 90s, or if Nike still only made shoes that were geared for performance athletes, because that's what they used to do. It was only for performance athletes. Now they're for everyone. What if Netflix still only sold DVD rentals versus streaming? At first, those things seem like a big shift. And with Netflix, I'm sure a lot of people thought that like, hey, Netflix is losing its identity. The people in Netflix are like, hey, we're losing our identity by doing this shift. But guess what? That evolution didn't compromise their integrity at all. It actually expanded their impact. And like now Netflix is not just a delivery service of like streaming stuff, but it's like a global entertainment powerhouse. Like it produces tons of original Netflix originals, right? Content-wise. And it's just setting boatloads of industry trends in what it's doing. And if they didn't do that, they might be around, but probably not. And so I thought, for example, that I would be compromising the integrity of our business by moving into education like I'm doing right now. And in doing so, though, we made the move. And in doing so, I've never been more fulfilled in my life. And so it's easy to not do things for fear of losing yourself or for fear of having to have said I failed. But to reach new heights, you have to change. And sometimes it's business. Sometimes it's the product entry point that you're doing. Sometimes it's you as a leader, because complacency is the true enemy of growth. And sometimes your business has to change. Sometimes, and this was actually pretty sad, but also it was like bittersweet kind of a situation. But I was in Orlando. We did this 4-day intensive for our clients. And I talked about this concept of it's okay for you and your business to evolve. That is okay. It is expected on your journey to evolve. And I shared this whole thing, and I had a client come up to me afterwards, and she was like, her eyes were watering. She said, I just needed to hear that. I needed to hear that it's okay for me to shift some things. And I was like, oh, and I hugged her, and we had this good conversation. And then come to find out, like the next day, someone's like, oh yeah, did you hear that Sarah's like, she's gonna be shutting down what she's doing from a business standpoint now? And I'm like, wait a second, did I just get rid of a client by encouraging them to shut down their business? And at the end of the day, it's like a bittersweet thing. And now she's staying on and she's launching into a new business model and what her niche is and everything. But it's okay to evolve as yourself or as a business. You can mourn the season, but celebrate the future. If you've been doing one product that you've been selling for a long, long time and you feel stuck, maybe you need to evolve and you need to start selling something different and remove the identity that you're attaching to that thing that you're selling, because that is the exact thing that just might be holding you back from the place that you're going. And principle number 10 is when you start complaining, you stop growing. I don't know if you've ever seen Winnie the Pooh, but I grew up watching a lot of Winnie the Pooh. And in Winnie the Pooh, Eeyore, right? Like he's the gloomy, perpetually always down in the dumps donkey, right? No matter what's going on, Eeyore always finds something to complain about. You ever hang out with someone like that? They just like suck the life out of you. Like you're just like, ugh, so-and-so is coming over with everybody else, or so-and-so is going to be there, or they ask me for coffee or lunch, and I don't really want to go, but I feel obligated because it's somebody in my family. Like the person that just never assumes responsibility, that doesn't own anything. It's not them, it's circumstances, it's the market, it's the economy, it's Meta. Meta's the one that's at fault. How many people have you met that do that? Like you could hand Eeyore a birthday present, and his response would probably be like, "Hey, thanks, but I'll probably lose it anyway." Right? Eeyore's the kind of guy that would look at a sunny day and he's like, "Well, it's probably going to rain later, though. The sun doesn't always last. Summer doesn't last. Winter's coming. It's going to get bad." Right? Complaining like it's full-time job. And when that happens, that happens when you get stuck in Eeyore mode is when you stop seeing possibilities. When everything you look at is always a problem, you've stopped seeing the possibilities. You start focusing in on what's the problem, complaining about the problem. You stop being open to solutions when your head goes in that space, and you just stop growing as a result of that. Because growth happens when you shift from an Eeyore mindset where everything that is going wrong could go wrong, Murphy's Law comes into play and everything is always going wrong, to what if you shifted to this mindset of curiosity and learning, where every challenge is this opportunity to become better? Because here's the truth. Like, you have a million reasons. Everybody does. You can have a million reasons why. You're overweight, why you aren't good with people, why business isn't where it should be, why ads aren't working, why everyone else has advantage over you, why it's not your fault, it's the economy, it's the ads manager, it's insert whatever. You have a million reasons. You absolutely. And you know what? No one's going to argue with you. No one's going to argue with you. You have all the reasons. You can give all the excuses you want. And I think what really sums up my feelings on this is this great, it's like a 2-3 minute clip called Good by Jocko Willink. Go YouTube it. It's really great. And it's called Good. And in it, he goes through and he says, because he was I believe he was a Navy SEAL, and he would say like, hey, whenever he'd have his guys would come to him and they would tell him something and they'd say like, hey, this didn't go as planned. And he would say, good. And then they would come back and say, hey, we weren't able to get the equipment. And he would say, good. And then someone would come back and say, well, I want to tell you this, but I know exactly what you're going to say. And he's like, well, what am I going to say? And they're like, you're going to tell me good. And he's like, yeah. Because when the mission doesn't go according to plan, when we don't get the when we don't get the gig, when one of us sprains an ankle, when something goes wrong, you say good, because that's the moment when you have this opportunity to perceive this negative thing in a positive way, to say, good, we have more time to restructure. This campaign didn't work, good, I just became a better advertiser. The product didn't sell, good, I just found one less product that I need to advertise, and how I need to become a better entrepreneur. And where my holes and my weakness is that I can then convert into strength. And so it's a great video, go watch it, I highly recommend it. But you have every reason to complain. But when you begin complaining, you stop growing. And when I hear that, I'm reminded of a quote by Henry Ford that says, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. You must first believe that it's possible in order for it to become a reality. So these are 10 principles I've learned over the last 11 years. Maybe there's something in there. I know this is a little long. Hopefully there's something in there that you're able to take and maybe apply to where you're at right now in your journey. Because to become a consistent entrepreneur and look at life through a lens of possibility, you have to know that there's this stage of consistent reinvention that you're going to go through, and that is a requirement to being an entrepreneur and to living a long life. And whether you think you're going to go through it or not, you're going to go through it. So it's better to prepare, and hopefully these principles gave you some insight.